All right, Genesis chapter 29 and 30 is what we're going through today. Now, this might not be an evangelistic message, but it's Bible. And so we're going through the Bible, studying verse by verse. And when we do that, we have to go by what it says. And what we see today is the continuing soap opera. That is the book of Genesis. We're going to see this guy named Jacob, his wives, and his kids. And boy, he really ends up in a mess. And it's kind of funny and sad at the same time. Because what did we see the last time? We saw that he deceived his father. Now we see his wife's father deceiving him. So he gets what he deserves, right? And what goes around comes around is the old saying. So last time we looked at lies and deceit. We looked at him being deceitful and deception. We saw deception. And it made me think, we're going to see how Jacob, well, we saw last week how Jacob lied to his dad. Now we're going to see how this guy, which is his uncle, lies to him. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that his mother lived with the guy who's a liar. And we remember that the mother was the one that told Jacob to go lie to his father. So you wonder if this whole lying thing came from that side of the family. So you got to be careful. You can teach your children to do the thing that you did if you're not careful. And we saw that last time, but I want to look at it real quick. Let's go to Genesis chapter 12. When the lie starts, it's just a half-truth. And Abraham literally tells a lie. Now, are we supposed to lie? No, not at all. So Genesis chapter 12, verse 11 through 13. And it came to pass, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarah his wife, Behold, now I know thou art a fair woman to look upon. He says, Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. Say, I pray thee, thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. So, was this a lie? Well, you remember that he literally married his half-sister. Back in those days, there were less people in the world. So, yeah, she was his sister, but it was kind of a half-truth because he's trying to deceive them into thinking they're not married. I guess it was such a rough neighborhood and a bad place that if they saw you and they wanted your wife, they'd kill you for your wife. I don't know. So he told her to lie. Well, because he did that, we see his son doing the same thing. Go to Genesis chapter 26. Genesis 26:7. The son learned from the father. Genesis 26:7. And the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, She is my sister. For he feared to say, She is my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. Now, this is a lie. Was she his sister? No, she was his cousin. Remember, they were kissing cousins? So, because the father lied, now the son follows suit and lies. And now what does his son do? Jacob lies, and we saw that last time. Genesis 27:19. We saw 4 lies of Jacob. Number 1 is Genesis 27:19. He came to his father, and he said, And Jacob said unto his father, I am Esau, thy firstborn. Lied to his own father. That's awful. And then he says, Eat this venison. Same verse. It wasn't venison, it was goat meat. So he lied again. Then Genesis 27:20. He says, And Isaac said unto his son, How is it thou hast found it so quickly, my son? And he said, Because the Lord thy God brought it to me. He lied. No, his mom gave it to him. His mom cooked it. And then again, verse 27:24. And he said, Art thou my very son Esau? And he said, I am. So the grandfather lied, only it was a half-truth, but then the son learned from him and lied, and then his son learned from him and lied. But it's not just that he learned it from his father, it was Jacob's mother that started the plot. Go to Genesis 27:5 through 17. Now we're not going to read the whole thing, but Genesis chapter 27, verse 5 through 17, what happens? And Rebekah heard when Isaac spake to Esau his son, and Esau went to the field and hunt for venison and bring it. And Rebekah said unto Jacob her son, saying, Behold. And then she hatches this plot. I want you to go and lie and say you're your brother. So do you see the lies? It's a shame. Should we as a family lie to each other? We should never lie. So see how the Bible is as a soap opera kind of, with all these stories? But also it's for our admonition and our learning. What are we learning from this? Don't lie to people. Don't tell a lie, because it can really go the wrong direction. And the Bible says, be sure your sin will find you out. And now we're going to see today in these chapters how Jacob gets lied to, and I bet he went, oh, I got what I deserved, because I told. When you get there, you're going to be like, what? It's crazy what happens. It's the coolest story. I like this story because he gets what he deserves. So why did Jacob lie? Well, because his mom told him to. But he also saw his father lie. So did he think it was okay? Now, when we see Jacob going to meet Laban, he goes to meet Laban, and Laban, we find out, is a liar and a deceiver. Just what Jacob turned out to be. So that made me kind of connect the dots and wonder, even though Rebekah is a great woman, if she didn't come from a dysfunctional family and didn't bring some of that in with Isaac. Because her brother, we find out today, is a big old liar. So maybe that's what planted the seed in her to lie to her husband. Okay? All that said, we can get started here. Why did Rebekah do that? Well, we're going to find out today that her brother, Laban, by the way, Laban means white, pure, or innocent. His name is I'm innocent. But he's not. He lies. So it's kind of funny. It's like sometimes you give a person a name and they don't live up to their name. So Jacob deceived his father, and now he's about to get instant karma. Oh, the irony of what we're about to see. What goes around comes around. And we will see Laban trying to take something from Jacob, steal something from Jacob, while Jacob is still plotting and scheming to get something from Laban. What a dysfunctional family. Here they're supposed to love each other and care about each other. They're lying to each other. And they're, I'm going to get this from you. No, I'm going to get this from you. And I don't like families like that, do you? But there are families like that only care about themselves. And let's don't be a family like that. Let's care about each other. All right, so here we go. Chapter 1 of verse 29. Or chapter 29, verse 1, 29:1. And Jacob went on his journey and came into the land of the people of the east. Okay, remember, he was told by his mom to go try to find a bride from her people. So he went up to the same place that Isaac found his bride, Rebekah. And he looked, and behold, a well in the field, and lo, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of that well they watered the flocks, and a great stone was upon the well's mouth. Now, interesting. He goes from Beersheba to the north of Hebron and Bethlehem. Now, when you look at Hebron and Bethlehem, they are very close to Jerusalem. Jerusalem's kind of right in the middle of that. So that means what we saw last time when he left his house and he went to that area and he set up, remember he set up a stone and he made an altar and he prayed to God? He is very close to the city of Jerusalem. That explains why he said what he said in 28:17. In Genesis 28:17 it says, and he was afraid and said, how dreadful is this place? This is none other but the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. And he's right there next to Jerusalem when he says it. How do we get to heaven? Through Jesus, what he did on the cross for us, his death, burial, resurrection, shedding his blood on the cross, and rising again. That's how we get to heaven. So that very area, I mean, that can't be coincidence. Now we read that he comes to this place, and the first thing he sees are 3 flocks of sheep. So there's 3 different groups with 3 different shepherds. Now, does number 3 mean anything? Well, I don't know, but I find it fascinating that whole area, all these people want to live in that area. Everyone's fighting over Israel. They want free Palestine. We want it. Who wants it? Well, the Muslims want it, the Christians want it, and the Jews want it. 3 flocks. Isn't that interesting? Do you think that's a coincidence that it mentions that? Or did the Bible know all those years ago there's going to be 3 main groups that want this land? And it could be that's why it's mentioned. But I just find it fascinating. When you go to Jerusalem, it's divided into 4, the city. It's the Muslim quarter, the Jewish quarter, the Christian quarter, and then it's the Armenian quarter. So it's actually got 4. But many of the Armenians would probably say they're Greek Orthodox or Christian. So you still see like the 3 main groups. So that's fascinating. It just tells us there's 3 groups. So he goes to this well, and verse 2, and a great stone was upon the well's mouth. Look at verse 3, and they rolled the stone. What does that make you think of? When Jesus died, they rolled a stone over his grave. So they rolled it back, and he rose again. Interesting, just coincidence. Or is it God wrote this book thousands of years ago, and it's all in mind to remind us of the rest of the book of the things that happened. So verse 3, and thither means there, Thither were all the flocks gathered, and they rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the sheep and put the stone again upon the well's mouth in his place. Now, why would they put a stone over a well? Well, birds are going to come over and poop in the well, then you can't drink it. So you've got to try to protect it so that dust doesn't go in and then bird stuff come in and things like that. Huh? Or frogs. Okay, do I need to tell that story? And we had a well in Honduras, and we had a stone on the top of it, just like this. But one day some frogs got in there and died. And so I was taking a shower in the house, and I smelled like dead frog. And I'm like, what is this? I had to run outside, a couple dead frogs in there, so I took like 4 gallons of bleach and just poured it in there. So for another week, I smelled like bleach. But bleach smells better than a dead frog, okay? But so you want to have something on top of that well to protect it, otherwise the water is going to go bad. So what does it say here? Verse 4, and Jacob said unto them, my brethren, whence be ye? And they said, of Haran are we. Okay, well, that's where Abraham comes from, Genesis 11:27. And he said to them, know ye Laban the son of Nahor? And they said unto him, we know him. That's kind of funny. Hey, do you know him? Yeah, we know him. He's like, I'm here to see him. I mean, he's like, yeah, we know him. It's not a big deal to them, but to him, it's like, this is my uncle that I've never met. I can't wait to meet him. So he sees a well. He sees the 3 different flocks of sheep waiting to drink from the well. And then they put the stone back. And then he comes to them while the stone is on top still, and he asks about his uncle Laban. And we read in verse 5, do you know him? And he said, yeah, we know him. Verse 6, and he said unto them, is he well? Is that a joke in the Bible? Is that a bad dad joke? He's at a well. He's like, well, is he well? And it's kind of funny. Did they understand what he's saying? Or, I mean, if they were half listening, they're like, yeah, there's a well right here, Or maybe they were, I don't know. It's a joke. Sorry, bad joke. Okay, so he asked about his uncle Laban at the well, is he well? And I wrote in my notes, ha ha, is he well? Okay, so verse 6. And he said unto him, is he well? And they said, he is well. And behold, Rachel his daughter cometh with the sheep. So here comes Rachel, which is his cousin, the first time he's ever seen her. And she's bringing sheep. So she's a shepherdess. Isn't that weird? I never heard of a shepherdess in the Bible up until this time. But for some reason, she's out there with the sheep. That's interesting. Verse 7, and he said, lo, it is yet high day, neither is it time that the cattle should be gathered together. Water ye the sheep and go and feed them. So he shows up and starts telling everybody what to do. Boy, I'm sure they liked him, all right? Or not. We find out later that he knows what he's doing because he does a great job. So maybe they should listen to him. I don't know. But imagine you just show up out of nowhere and telling everybody what to do. I don't think he was very well liked. And while he yet spake with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. So she was a shepherdess. And it came to pass, when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. It sounds like it was a big stone. Could have to have 3 different groups move it. So is that he had some guns? Was he showing off? Was it because she's family that I want to help her, or did he really like her? And now he's going to go show off. Look at me, I'm rolling the stone away. Look how strong I am. Kind of sound. You got to kind of read between the lines, right? Here's what happened. Verse 11, and Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. Really? Do you think he just went over and said, hey, cousin, on both cheeks? Or do you think he's thinking, man, I came over here to get a wife and I found her? Because do you remember what we read already whenever Eliezer came and they met at the well? But what a complete reversal of the story that we read before. Eliezer comes and he sits down at the well and he says, Lord, whoever's the first woman that comes and feeds my camels, that's the one, and I'm taking her back. Well, is this what happens? No, it's reversed. Jacob waters her sheep. Something's different. It's backwards. The guy's supposed to be the shepherd, not the shepherdess. See how it's kind of, things are starting to change here. It's a little bit different. So Rachel comes over, and in verse 9, it says that Rachel came with her father's sheep. So she came closer. Did Laban own the well? Did Jacob get permission from Rachel to open it? Or did he just open it up without permission? Whose well is it? Well, you shouldn't be touching it if it's not your well. Maybe that's why the other guys are. So he just goes and he gets in there and he does this thing. And this is the opposite of the story of Rebekah. Rebekah watered the camels And now we see Jacob, it's doing it backwards. Now he kisses her as a family member, or is he kissing her because he wants to marry her? And then he starts crying. Boy, that's winning points, isn't it? You want to be a real strong man? Look at me, how big I'm strong. I can move this. He starts crying right in front of her. It's just, do you see the picture here? She's probably getting mixed signals. Now look at verse 12. Or wait, we skipped? Yeah, verse 10. And it came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. And Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. Now verse 12. And Jacob told Rachel that he was his father's brother and that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father. Now, do you remember what happened when Eliezer was there? Rebekah ran to come water the sheep. Well, he runs to her, waters her sheep, and then she runs away. So it's a complete different, it's not the same story. And what do you think she ran to tell her father? Do you think she was running to say, hey, I just met my cousin? Or you think she's running back going, I just got kissed? Which one? Probably both. And today we'd be like, ooh, my cousin kissed me, gross. But back then there weren't a lot of people in the world, so they were kissing cousins. So there's a lot going on in this story, but I just think it's fascinating how different this is from the story of how Isaac got his bride. The woman was showing her willingness. Here we see, as we continue in the study of the Bible, that Rachel is not a good girl. Do you know Rachel is an idol worshiper? She actually worships idols. And she actually will use things like this, and we're going to see later. And I wonder if that wasn't some sort of witchcraft or something that she used these things for. So Rachel is a beautiful woman, but I think she might be very, very, very young here to be a shepherdess, because usually the young kids go out and watch the sheep. And there's a lot going on here. And he falls in love with what he sees on the outside. And we're going to find out there's two different kinds of women, those that are pretty on the inside and those that are pretty on the outside. So let's continue. Verse 13, and it came to pass when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. And he told Laban all these things. So Laban was really, wow, I got a nephew I've never met before. I can't wait. Now, did he say, why'd you kiss my daughter? Well, it doesn't say there, but it's still in the back of his mind. And he remembers how, his sister went and got married to those people. So what is he thinking here? You got to wonder, well, we find out later, all he's thinking about is, oh, good, another guy that can roll a stone away and work for me, is what it sounds like, because all he cares about is money. The more we get into this, the more you can read back into the story and kind of think about what they're thinking about. So, verse 14, and Laban said to him, surely thou art my bone and my flesh, and he abode with him the space of a month. The space of a month. Now, here's what I'm asking. Why? Why did he stay there a whole month? Well, he was afraid that his brother's going to kill him. Remember, Esau wanted to kill him? But what was the last thing his mother said? She said, go there for a few days, get you a wife, and come back. Well, now he's disobeyed his mother. He stayed there for a whole month. Why did he stay so long? When the story of Eliezer came, and he said, all right, this is the bride. I'm taking her back. They said, well, may let her stay a little bit longer. No, I'm taking her back. No, let her stay a little. No, I'm taking her. And, well, let's ask her. And they asked Rebekah, wilt thou go with this man? And she said, I will go. So why is it different this time? I guess Jacob's not thinking about how his father did it, and he's doing it his own way. I guess, maybe Laban had a lot of stuff that he wanted to get. So can you get yourself in the mind of Jacob? He's thinking, ooh, I got a rich uncle. Maybe if I stick with him, I'll get rich. So do you see how that works? So now he's forgetting about his parents and listening to what his mom told him. Come back in a few days and bring your wife with you. So as I read this story over and over and over again, I just see, wow, a young kid not thinking, going doing what he does without remembering the advice of his parents. Go get your wife and go back. So here's what happens. Verse 14, and Laban said to him, surely thou art my bone and my flesh. And he abode with him the space of a month. And Laban said unto Jacob, because thou art my brother. So now he's not just his nephew, now he's his brother. Because thou art my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? Tell me what thy wages shall be. So he's working for Laban. Why do you think he's working for Laban? Because he gets to go to work every day and go see Rachel. He just wants to be with her. Why didn't he say, hey, can I marry her? I'd like to marry her and go home because that's what my mom said to do. You think he would have said, okay, maybe. But this whole thing, it's getting prolonged and prolonged. And it's not what was supposed to happen, is what I'm trying to say. So verse 16, and Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Okay, so now there's 2 daughters involved. Leah means grieved or weary or tender or wild cow. What a weird. So she's a huzzy heifer. No, I'm sorry, I should not have said that. But she is very beautiful inward, but kind of not so beautiful outward, I guess. I don't know, but Leah means tender. So I think, when I think of her, I think she probably blushed a lot, probably had a real tender, good heart. Rachel means ewe, which is a lamb. So the Bible defines the name when we read the rest of it. Verse 17, Leah was tender-eyed. Well, that's what her name means, tender. But Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. So you've got one of them is beautiful outwardly, Rachel, and it sounds like the other was beautiful inward because she had a good heart. So one of them was probably vain and pretty. The other was probably more homely, but very faithful. Which would make the better wife? Okay? Just thinking about it, if you get married, get a good wife. Don't just look at the outward beauty, look for inward beauty, because if they're vain and they're pretty, they're going to hurt you. Does that make sense? Because a woman that only thinks about herself, that's messed up. So when I think of Leah, I think she probably wore her heart on her shoulder. She's probably very sweet, probably very emotional, but was probably the best thing for Jacob. But all he wanted was what? He wanted the pretty girl that he saw the first time that he kissed. Well, she was the younger one. So how young was she? Is this something where they had to go to Alabama to get married because she was so young? Only you guys know that. They don't do that anymore. But when I was a kid, you could get married under the age of 18 in places like Alabama or some other place with your parents' permission, right? Or maybe it was Alabama was the last state without your parents' permission.
It's Mississippi also.
Mississippi, you could go get married at 16 without your parents. Not anymore, but this was back then. So here's what happens. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, now why would he say this? To me, this is weird. First of all, we have that 7 years thing show up again. How many times have we seen 7 years? What are we reading here? We're reading a story of what sounds like right before the tribulation. Because there's 7 years and then there's another 7 years. There's 7 good years, 7 bad years. So when we have the rapture, there must be 7 good years before the rapture when comes the bad 7 years. So he says, I'll work for you for 7 years if you'll let me marry your daughter. That sounds crazy, doesn't it? Why would you want to work? I was like, well, my wages will be this much every month, and I'm going to leave in 2 months because my mom said to come home. Why would he say 7 years all of a sudden? I don't get it. I don't understand. But he did. And maybe he's thinking in 7 years, I can have some cattle and have me a little flock so that when I go home, I'll have some. And maybe that's what the idea was. For 7 years, I'll work for you and I get this, this, and this. And it took 7 years to have that big of a flock. I don't know. I'm not that kind of a person, so I don't know. But I think that's probably what he's thinking is, I want to get something out of this and I want to have my wife. So why didn't he just say, though, Eliezer sent me to get a wife, so I need her to go with me now and we'll be on our way. Bye-bye. Because that's what Eliezer said to get Rebekah. Why is he doing it so different than the way his dad did? I don't understand. Okay, so maybe you understand. But he said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. Okay, verse 19, and Laban said, it is better that I give her to thee than that I should give her to another man. Abide with me. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days for the love he had to her. Now, wait a minute. Could it be 7 years because she was that young? I don't know. Maybe she was 10 and he loved her. What's he do kissing a 10-year-old for or something like that? And he's waiting until she's 17. I don't know. See, there's all these questions that I have. But for some reason, he said, I'm going to serve you 7 years for her. Okay, so what happens? Verse 21. And Jacob said unto Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in unto her. So 7 years have passed. He worked for Laban. He says, now give me my wife. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to him, and he went in unto her. So the way they got married back then is they had a feast, and then at the feast they made their vows to each other and to God. And then at the end of the feast they'd go into their tent and they'd consummate their marriage. But the marriage was the vow, and the witnesses came to the feast because you have to have witnesses when you make your vows. Okay? So they wait till the party's almost over and it's dark, and you go in the dark in your tent. So here's what happened. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to him, and he went in unto her. And Laban gave unto his daughter Leah Zilpah his maid for an handmaid. Now watch what happens in verse 25. And it came to pass that in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this that thou hast done unto me? Did not I serve with thee for Rachel? Wherefore then hast thou beguiled me? So he deceived his father to get a blessing. Now he's deceived by her father. Now why did he do that? And how did he not know? It must have been really dark. That must have been some party that they partied till the middle of the night. And he goes in and he wakes up in the morning and goes, oh man, I love you, Rebekah. Ah! You're not Rebekah. Could you imagine? I can imagine him storming out of that tent so angry. That's not my wife. What is this? But that's what happened. So he deceived somebody. Now he gets deceived. Do you think he kind of stopped and went, oh, okay, I deserved it? You would think so. You would think so. So what happens? Well, verse 26, and Laban said, it must not be so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 other years. You think he feels like he shot himself in the foot? He probably should have said, I'll work a whole year for you, because then he'd only have to work another year later. But it was 7 years. So, and I don't know if he worked another 7 years before he married her. What it kind of looks like, as I read between the lines, is that he went ahead and gave her to him then. Now he went home that night and there's 2 women in his tent. And then he worked another 7 years to fulfill for the second one. That's what it looks like. I think it's 20 years all total, because after the 7 years, it was another 6 years that he served. And that was to get what he wanted so that he could leave. So he just got bamboozled. He just got deceived. Now he's got 2 wives instead of 1. Can you imagine? What a mess. What a mess. And he also got Zilpah, which is the handmaid. You know what Zilpah means? Zilpah means to drip, to pour, to flow, to sprinkle, to drop, or a dropping. So I don't know what to do with that, but she was the handmaid. So now he's got 3 women in his tent. He went over there to find 1 wife, and we're going to find out he ends up with 4. He bit off more than he could chew, right? But that's where the people of Israel came from, all these 12 tribes. But I read this and I just want to laugh my butt off, because he deceives his father. Now he's deceived by somebody else's father. And it all comes to pass the way that it's supposed to, but it's just, he's probably rethinking, yeah, I should have listened to mommy and come over here and said, no, I'm leaving tomorrow, you give me my wife. How would that have worked out? Well, probably, I can only give you Leah. All right, then he'll leave with Leah. Or else he'll say, well, give me both of them. I don't know how that would work, but this is how it all worked out. So now we look at verse 27, and he says, fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 other years. And Jacob did so and fulfilled her week, and he gave him Rachel his daughter to wife also. So it was after another 7 years, or was it then, and then he worked another 7 years? It's kind of hard to tell. And Laban gave to Rachel his daughter Bilhah his handmaid to be her maid. And he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years. So see, doesn't it kind of sound like he gave it to it, and then he served the 7 years? So now he's got 2 women in his tent, and he loves one more than the other. Oh, that's not a recipe for disaster. Now they're always going to be fighting each other. He loves you more than me. No, he loves me more than you. And that's what the whole story is all about. What a mess. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Because Jacob, I don't think, was a very happy man, because now his whole life is living in a tent with bickering women. I feel sorry for him, kind of. I really do. But what do you do? So continue there. And it says, verse 31, and when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben. For, she said, surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. So she does not feel loved. What a dysfunctional family. And she's like, well, finally he'll love me because I gave him the firstborn child. Now, what's fun is here's Leah, and look, she has half of the children of Israel, half of the tribe. She has 6 kids. Then we're going to see other kids. And I love heraldry, and what's cool is you see the heraldry of each one of the tribes. And this is called heraldry, and we'll look at that probably later. But Reuben is right here, and on his seal, it's mandrakes. And we're going to read about the mandrakes. But it's kind of cool how they have their seals for their tribes. So remember how Ishmael had 12 princes? Well, now Jacob has 12, and they become the 12 tribes, 12 princes of Israel. Okay, so we continue there in verse 33. And she conceived again and bare a son, and said, Behold, the Lord hath heard that I was hated. He hath therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. What does Simeon mean? Well, first of all, what does Reuben mean? And let me back up. Rachel's womb was barren. Remember Sarah was barren in Genesis 11:30? Remember Rebekah was barren in Genesis 25:21? Why is it the Lord is making these women barren? I don't know. Maybe God wants them to not have a child for a little while until later. Maybe it all has to do with God's timing. Maybe God's timing in heaven goes, well, it'd be a little too soon to have a child right now. I don't understand all this, but that's what happened. So Reuben means behold a son, or the son of vision, or a son who is seen. Simeon means to hear or to listen. And so she's saying, God's listening to me because I'm the one that had a baby and she didn't. So it's all about me, me, me. My sister's no good. Isn't that wild? Simeon, his seal has a castle on it. And so that's his heraldry. So next guy, we see in verse 34, and she conceived again and bare a son, and said, Now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore was his name called Levi. And Levi means joined, joiner, attached, or connected. And Levi became the tribe of priests. And their seal is the Urim and Thummim. Remember that in the Old Testament? Oh, I only put 9. There's supposed to be 12. My bad. But that's the seal of Levi, and it has to do with them becoming the class of the priests in Israel. All the priests were Levitical priests. All right, now verse 35. And she conceived again and bare a son, and she said, Now will I praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah, and left bearing. Judah means praise or thanksgiving, or let him be praised. Let God be praised. And Judah is where Jesus comes from. Jesus is the Messiah that comes from the tribe of Judah. And there's a reason why God didn't choose Reuben or Simeon or Levi, but chose Judah to bring the promised seed from. And we'll see that. And Joseph is a type of Jesus in many ways, but the seed that Jesus comes from comes through Judah. And Judah is a lion. And when you look at the shield of Judah, there's a lion. Now you go to Jerusalem, all over Jerusalem is the seal of the city of Jerusalem, and it looks just like that. It's a lion on it. Because Judah is the place where the tribe of Judah was supposed to settle, and Jerusalem is right where they would have settled. So isn't that cool? That's the horrible lion. I'm sorry, that's the best I could draw a lion. But that's the tribe. So if you ever get to go to Israel, look for the... I love looking at any city I go to. This might sound stupid. I love to look down at where the sewer is and see that big metal sewer cover, because it always says city of or something. And when you're walking through Jerusalem, you look down and it says city of Jerusalem, and there's the lion of Judah right there. So it's everywhere. It's everywhere. So he marries his favorite wife, Rachel, but she's not having any kids. So he's having his other wife have all the kids. If he loved her more, he would have said, I don't want the other wife. But why is he having more kids with the other wife? Because they're fighting each other. It's my turn. No, it's my turn. And then I'm sure he comes on the field. He's tired. He's sweating. And they're both grabbing his arm. No, come with me. No, come with me. No, come with. Can you imagine? His life doesn't sound like it's as happy as he thought it would be. It's always, okay, all right. But it doesn't end there. So now chapter 30. And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, Give me children or else I die. Isn't that funny? Now she comes and she's just like, oh, I'm going to die if you don't give me any kids. And he's like, promises, promises. No, I'm sure he didn't say it like that. But he's like, oh boy. So do you see all the drama in his life? And it all came from making a bad decision. So here we go. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel. You can see he's not a very happy camper, and he's getting angry because they're fighting each other. Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, Am I in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? And she said, Behold, my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. Where have we seen this before? That was the mistake, that was the error, that was the wrong thing that Abraham did when Sarah said to do that. Was there a lack of faith here? Yeah. So now, Bilhah, he goes into Bilhah and has children. And guess what? That's the worst of the tribes, the tribe of Dan. One of the worst tribes that you can think of. In fact, it is represented by a snake. Well, the devil's a snake. Where'd Dan go? Right here. So it's a mess. It's a mess what's happening. But it all has to come to pass in order to have the 12 tribes of Israel. So don't make that mess. All right? It says here, and where am I? Okay, over here. And he says, and she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife, and Jacob went in unto her. And Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. And Rachel said, God hath judged me, and hath also heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore called she his name Dan. All right? What does Dan mean? Dan means to judge or justice or judging. And so she's saying, God is judged, and I'm the right one because I had a son. No, you didn't. Your handmaid did, and you adopted it. So do you see what's going on there? And he's represented by a snake. Verse 7, and Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again. What? She let him do it not just once, but more than once? Weird. And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again and bare Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali. Naphtali means my wrestling, my struggle, my crafty, or my cunning one. And his seal is a deer. And we see him, Naphtali, and that's supposed to be a deer. I'm sorry, I should have put. And so this is Naphtali. But do you see how God gave the most children through the first wife? And he only gave a couple to the one that Jacob loved the most. But he also allowed him to have children from her handmaid. So he ends up with 4 wives. What a mess. What a mess. So we continue. In verse 9 says, when Leah saw that she had left bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her Jacob to wife. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a son. And Leah said, a troop cometh, and she called his name Gad. What is wrong with Jacob? Why can't he just say no? I mean, he's henpecked, I guess. I almost feel like he's like this. Whatever. Because he's almost like, nothing's going my way. I can't get what I want. I can't get a kid from the one I love the most. Whatever. I mean, I just feel like that was his favorite word. Whatever. But why on earth? So here comes Gad. Now, what does Gad mean? Well, here's Gad's symbol, and it's tents. It's a couple of tents. And it's because Gad means a troop. Let me see if I have it here. Gad means good fortune or luck. But also, she says, a troop. And Gad was part of a big army. They became a big army, and they lived in tents. So, verse 12. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son. Now, I can't fathom this, and I don't want to be gross. But the guy's out working in the field with the sheep all day, and he comes home, and there's 4 women waiting for him. And he's got to pick one to go sleep in the tent with that night. That makes the other 3 angry. So, I would be not looking forward to the end of the day, because now I got to make 3 women angry and I have to go to 1. Isn't that wild? What a mess. What a mess. And why did he keep going back to the handmaids? Because they didn't have any say in the matter, right? But he did. And she bare a son again. And so it says, and Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son. And Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher. All right, what does Asher mean? Asher means happy or blessed. So see how it actually in the text defines what the name means? And he, old Asher, he has a tree as his shield. So it's kind of neat that they all have their own kind of a symbol. And they all had colors involved too. I didn't tell you the colors, but these tribes, and later in the Bible we see these tribes going out with Moses, and they're all in their own camps. And they would have had their standard, and that would have been what it would have been. So happy or blessed. And I think that Jacob was anything but happy. He probably was like, I dread coming home because I have to fight these women. All I want to do is rest, and now I got to fight off 3 women so I can just go rest. And I can't rest. She wants me to have a kid. It just seems like a soap opera. Okay, so now we get to a weird part. Verse 14, and Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field. Reuben's the firstborn. And brought them into his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes. And she said unto her, it is a small matter that thou hast taken my husband, and wouldest thou take away my son's mandrakes also? And Rachel said, therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. So while he's out in the field working, the girls are going, well, I want him tonight. No, I want him tonight. No, okay, if you'll do this for me, then you can have him tonight, and I'll take him tomorrow night. Can you imagine living your life like that? When women behind the scenes are directing your... That's weird. But that's the way it went. Now, what on earth is a mandrake? It's a root. And the root of a mandrake, you look this up online, it's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. The root looks like a human, looks like a person. It has 2 roots on the bottom that look like legs and some roots on the side that look like arms. And then it's got little things up on top that look like hair. What a weird, weird, weird thing. When I first saw that, I thought of like a Cupid doll or whatever they call it. What are those people that do the voodoo? What do they call those little dolls they stick pins in and stuff? A voodoo doll is what I thought of. It's like, that's what it looks like. But supposedly you grind this up and it's an aphrodisiac. So it makes somebody want to have kids, I guess. I will say it that way nicely. So he finds these and he brings them in and he says, hey, look, it looks like a little doll. And Rachel's like, oh, I want it because I want my husband to come to me and I want to have a baby. So weird. It's actually from the nightshade family. Mandrakes are a perennial plant of the genus Mandragora. Mandragora almost sounds like dragon, doesn't it? Known for their humanoid-shaped roots, toxic alkaloids, and rich history in folklore, medicine, and magic. So that's what made me go, We're going to find out later that Rachel worshipped her parents' idols. She actually stole Laban's idols. So it makes me wonder, is she kind of using that like a voodoo doll? I hope not. I hope that's just, no, she just wants to grind it up as an aphrodisiac because that's what it can be used for as well. So that's interesting. So now we go down to verse 16. And Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him. All right, so he's probably going, what's up? Where's the other 3? Uh-oh, they made a deal. Hi, And I could just imagine him going home from the field going, I could just keep going this way. I don't have to go to home tonight. I got to go into this again. And it's just always something, I'm sure. So verse 16, and Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, thou must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. So they made a deal. You get to sleep with Rachel tomorrow, but tonight you're mine. How does that sound? I mean, I told you it's a soap opera. And God hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived and bare Jacob a 5th son. And Leah said, God hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband. And she called his name Issachar. How's the sound? Sound still going good? So Issachar. So what does Issachar mean? Well, Issachar means there is recompense, or he is rewarded, but it also means man of hire. It almost sounds like he's being hired by his wives, so when he can come into them or whatever. And if you look at them, they have, I've seen it 2 different ways when it comes to Issachar. One shield is the moon and the sun. Another shield, supposedly of Issachar, is a guy carrying like a bag on his back of like wheat or something. But Issachar means there is recompense, he is rewarded, or a man of hire. So that's interesting. So what an interesting thing to read here. So then what happens? And Leah conceived again, verse 19, and bare Jacob the 6th son. The 6th son. And Leah said, God hath endued me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons, and she called his name Zebulun. She's literally thinking, if I give him more sons, he'll just come to me every night and forget the other 3 women. It didn't work that way. He's got to divide his time now between all 4. So she just wanted all his time and all his attention. And what a mess that they're fighting each other. Okay? So what happens? Well, the name here is Zebulun. Zebulun means dwelling or habitation or glorious dwelling place. And Zebulun, a lot of people say that the people of Zebulun became ship people. And on the seal of Zebulun is a ship. And so they're your mariners. So there are the 6 children of Leah. And she literally thought, if I just keep having more kids, he'll love me more. And it didn't work. That's sad, isn't it? I guess if you went to Jacob and asked him, which wife do you love the most? He'd say, I love them all equally, probably like that, just so to avoid problems. But secretly, he loved one wife more than the others. And we find out because of that, he loved one son more than the others. And we'll find that out later chapters, not right now. So we are in verse, 21. And afterwards, she bare a daughter and called her name Dinah. So I'm not sure about this, but I think that she would go around and blow her horn all the time. Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow your horn? Do you remember that song? No, I'm just joking. But anyway, she'd blow the shofar, I guess. Dinah, won't you blow your shofar? But he had a daughter as well. So there's Leah. Leah was very fertile, had a lot of children. And from Leah, being the firstborn, came the seed of Christ. So there's something to the firstborn, but it wasn't the firstborn of her son, it was the fourthborn. Because these all did something they shouldn't have. So God said, I'm going to go through Judah. Now then, we go to verse, where do we end here? Verse 22. And God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened to her and opened her womb. And she conceived finally, and bare a son, and said, God hath taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, and said, the Lord shall add to me another son. Joseph means he will add, or to increase, or doubler, or repeater. And Joseph has a shield for the children of Joseph, and it's a palm tree with wheat, sheaves of wheat, which is interesting because later he has a dream about sheaves of wheat and something like that. But Joseph is Jacob's most loved child from his most loved wife. And then something happens to Joseph. He thinks Joseph died, and I'm sure that tore him up because his favorite wife dies first, and his favorite son he thought died. He's probably like, why is God picking on me? So he has another son named Benjamin, and Rachel literally dies when she gives birth to Benjamin. So this becomes his whole love is Benjamin, because it's the only son he has left of the woman that he loved the most. Isn't that something? What a story. What a story. So let's finish this up here. Verse 25, and it came to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said unto Laban, send me away, that I may go unto mine own place and to mine own country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served thee, and let me go. For thou knowest my service which I have done thee. So just let my people go. That's the first time that you ever says, let my people go. And Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry, for I have learned by experience that the Lord hath blessed me for thy sake. So I don't care about you, I care about me. God blessed me because of you, so you stay here to bless me more. Is that not selfish? The more I read this, the more I see the selfishness of Jacob, the selfishness of Rachel, the selfishness of Leah, the selfishness of Laban. They were very selfish people. Should we be selfish? We should probably think about others before we think about ourselves. That's what I was taught. So we continue here. Verse 28, and he said, appoint me thy wages, and I will give it. And he said unto him, thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me. Now, what he's about to do, what does Jacob mean? Schemer. A guy that schemes and plots. He makes a plot. All right, I'll work for you, but I'm going to get this out of it. And he's already schemed a plan in his mind how he can get the absolute most out of this guy that he can get. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know how this works. I'm not a farmer. But I know somehow he devised a way to make the cattle the strongest as the one that he would get. So he got the strongest cattle and left the weakest cattle for Laban so that he came out of this with everything he could possibly get. Again, a little bit selfish. So let's read that. Maybe some farmers here can tell me about it. And he said, appoint me thy wages, and I will give it. And he said unto him, thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me. For it was little which thou hadst before I came, and it is now increased into a multitude. And the Lord hath blessed thee since my coming, and now when shall I provide mine own house also? And he said, what shall I give thee? And Jacob said, thou shalt not give me anything. If thou wilt do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep thy flock. So he says, I don't want anything except this little scheme that I'm hatching. I will pass through all the flock today, removing from thence all the speckled and spotted cattle, and all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and of such shall be my hire. So he says, look, all the animals that are of the same color, you get to keep. All the ones that are different shades of colors, have 2 or 3 different colors, I'll keep. So he said, you keep the ones that are the same color, I'll keep the ones that are all different. Okay? Is there something to that? Now, I don't know about farming, but I know you can have thoroughbreds, and then I know that you can have the making of 2 differents together. Sometimes that's stronger, right? Somehow. I don't know how that works. But it says, verse 33, so shall my righteousness answer for me in time to come, when it shall come for my hire before thy face, every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and brown among the sheep, that shall be counted stolen with me. And Laban said, behold, would it might be according to thy word. And he removed that day the he-goats that were ring-straked and spotted, and all the she-goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had some white in it, and all the brown among the sheep, and gave them unto the hand of his sons. So he said, I'm going to take all, well, you know, you think about it, you would look at a speckle or a spot kind of like a, oh, wow, it's like a ugly, right? A blemish or something. It's not. It's natural. But he said, yeah, I want these ones. Well, the ones that are speckled and spotted ended up being the stronger ones than the ones that were all the same color. And somehow he knew this. And so he's scheming and he's plotting to go against his uncle and get the best of what his uncle had and leave him with the worst. What a nice fella, right? Okay, I guess so. So verse 36, and he set 3 days' journey betwixt himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Why 3 days' journey? It makes us think of 3 days and 3 nights of Jesus, right? And Jacob took him rods. Now here's what I don't know. So I don't know. So I can't explain this. But Jacob took him rods of green poplar and of the hazel and chestnut tree, and pilled white strakes in them, and made the white appear which was in the rods. And he set the rods which he had pilled before the flocks in the gutters of the watering troughs when the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive when they came to drink. And the flocks conceived before the rods, and brought forth cattle ring-straked, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob did separate the lambs, and set the faces of flocks toward the ring-straked, and all the brown of the flock of Laban. And he put his own flocks by themselves, and put them not into Laban's cattle. And it came to pass, whensoever the stronger cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. That's where we say, your mind is in the gutter. That's where that comes from, I guess. And it came to pass, whensoever the stronger cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. And when the cattle were feeble, he put them not in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. And the man increased exceedingly, and had much cattle, and maidservants, and menservants, and camels, and asses. So he literally started breeding the cattle of Laban and giving him the weakest while he kept the best. Now, is that nice? He should have just said, okay, my wages are this, give me half your cattle. But no, he had to make it sounds like he didn't like Laban. And as we read next week, when he and Laban have a falling out, he tells Laban, look, you lied to me 10 times, you changed my wages. He said, you're not a good guy. Well, when someone's not good to you, do you be good back? So you see, this whole thing is a huge dysfunctional family. And they only care about themselves. Now, there's one person missing here, and that's Benjamin. And he hasn't been born yet. So we'll look at him later. But I'll show you what it looks like. A fork, a spoon, and a mug. And Benjamin means son of... I forget. I didn't look it up. I thought I had it on here. If you would, look up what Benjamin means. Rachel, as she died, she said his name is Benoni. But he said, no, I'm going to call him Benjamin. And this is supposedly having to do with military prowess. I don't know how that has to do with military prowess, but there's your mess right there, you know, and the eating and everything. So each one of the 12 tribes had their own standard or their own shield or flag and their own symbolism, just like the ancient heraldry of the Middle Ages, like the knights had. So this is the story of Jacob and his wives and his children. And the whole thing is just an interesting story, but it just seems so sad that it didn't work out for him getting the right one at the right time. He had to go through 4 different ones and wait to the end of his life to get the son that he loved the most.
Son of my sorrow.
Son of my sorrow. Benjamin means son of my sorrow. And what was his sorrow? Well, Joseph, they sold him off and they told his dad he died. So Jacob thinks that his favorite son from his favorite wife died. Well, now she gets pregnant again, and I bet he's the happiest he's ever been. I'm finally going to have a son from my favorite wife. And as soon as he's born, she dies. So there's the sorrow, son of my sorrow. So Jacob's life is a little sad. And why is it so sad? Because Laban deceived him by not giving him the wife he was supposed to have to begin with. So you got to wonder, was that really a custom that the older woman gets married first? Or was maybe Laban made that up? I don't know. But he ended up having 1 wife, 2 wife, 3 wife, 4 wife. And when he dies at the end of his life, it's interesting what he says. Few have been the years of my life. And then he says, you know, basically, and I wasn't anything special. My life was just almost a waste of time. What a sad thing to say for Jacob. He could have made something of his life, and he did, but he did it through treachery, through deceit. Let's don't be like that. Let's don't be like him. Okay? Try to find the right wife. When you get her, stick with her. Amen? And don't make a mess with all these other women. Amen? That's all I'm saying. Because you can really get in a mess. And not only you're messed up, you're messing up the lives of your children. These guys sold that guy. And I'm sure he was bitter at them for a while, but it ended up, he saved the whole family because he was in Egypt. And it's just fascinating how it all works together. Just like it says, God can do all things. And all things work together for good, you know, to them who love God and who are called according to his purpose. So that is Genesis 29 and 30. I hope we learned something today. Next week, we'll look at Jacob leaving, and he still has to deal with Laban, and we'll see how Rachel stole her daddy's idols. So there's idol worship still going on, and that's really, really sad. So any questions or comments on where the Jews came from? This is why some people today don't like Jews, because they feel like many Jews are still scheming and trying to steal from people and things like that. When you look at Germany, right? That awful dictator wrote Mein Kampf. Remember that? And he was very anti-Jewish, and he said all the Jews want to do is just plot and scheme and steal from you. No, not everybody's like that. But that's why people think that about them, is because we see that that's how at one time they did things. But they're not like that today. I've met some wonderful, wonderful Jews. Wonderful people in Israel. Anybody questions? All right. Well, amen. I thought that was fun, and I enjoyed putting this together for you too. So we'll see you next time, and we'll learn more about Jacob. And just remember that through Jacob, through Judah, comes Jesus. And that's the promised seed that this whole book is all about, that goes back to Genesis chapter 3 and verse 15. And so we see Jesus, he's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. All right. God, thank you for today. Thank you for letting us study your word. I pray, Lord, that we would heed it. It's not just a story, but it's also a warning. And Lord, please help us to heed that warning and not try to deceive people, not try to do wrong, but learn from the way they did it and do it right so we don't go through the same problems they had. Thank you for it, and please bless us in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Amen. Well, was that fun?
Like I said, that's something you'd see on like drama TV.
Yeah.
Soap opera.
Okay.
Huh?
Soap opera.
It's definitely a soap opera. It is. Yeah.
Absolute soap opera. Okay. Well, this one, and then it reminds you of that. sister wives or whatever. I know it's more.
Sister wives, yeah, that's the first sister wives.
Yeah, it's kind
And
of
they're
like
all